a bit of acclimatization on your return.
Yes, there's nothing like getting off the plane to rain to welcome you back to England.
Yeah, we've had some proper rain as well.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I think I tweeted on Sunday morning. I woke up to like black clouds pouring down with rain, blooming cold. Great.
Yeah, last week was all right. It's just this. Yeah, no, it was the week before, wasn't it? When you were here, it was all right, and then it was sort of last week it went downhill. I think during the week it was okay. It was just when we got to the weekend.
Yeah, I think we should have gone for 2 weeks. I think.
Yeah, that's what when we came back, we thought the same thing.
Yeah, God, it's so hot. It's really nice, but there you go.
Right, might as well do it. Jason, welcome back.
Thank you very much. I've had a bit of a podcast feed issue, so I haven't been able to listen to last week's show. I need to have a look at my my podcast app. It's not picking it up for some reason.
Well, yeah, as Gary said on Twitter, it's maybe because it knows we're talking about you, so.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'll look forward to listening. I think I need to unsubscribe, resubscribe. I did try resetting the podcast. Now it just says there's no episodes whatsoever.
Oh, that's handy. Have you tried using the actual Windows Phone podcast app?
I did try when I had that on my 920, but to be honest, I kind of get on so well with Brincast. I just tended to, I didn't really bother setting up. The thing with Brincast is you can export your podcast subscriptions to OneDrive as a .opml file. So importing it again was really simple. But with the podcast app, I don't think it necessarily synchronizes, or at least it didn't when I was, because to be fair, the podcast app is pre-installed on the 930, but when I went into it, there was no podcast, which was a bit disappointing given that it's a Microsoft. You'd have thought they could synchronize that, but yeah, there you go.
Well, I just started to use it, and yeah, it works really well actually. And the nice thing is you can just search for the show. You don't even have to bother with the RSS feed. You can just type it in there, and it works fine. But I brought in, there was one show I had that it didn't find. But I just copied and pasted the XML feed, and it brought it in okay. The only thing I haven't figured out is how the auto sort of synchronization, because there doesn't seem to be any schedule or anything like that. So I'm not sure how it's going to bring in new shows, the new episodes, or whether you have to actually open it to actually, to force it to download.
Yeah, that was kind of my experience with it on the 920, that I always had to go into the app, and then, if it would then synchronize and download any episodes, whereas Brincast seems to do, it just seems to do a better job. I'm hoping as, Windows Phone 8.1 and, kind of evolves, that they'll be able to actually do a proper background sync. But yeah, because I don't know about you, but I haven't seen any update to the podcast, the Microsoft Podcast app, and I kind of expect to see that updated quite frequently. Because as you say, I would have expected that to be, although the controls and the interface are quite simple, I would have thought little features like background synchronization would be, Microsoft would be easy to be able to implement something through Azure, but they don't seem to have.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything on that. So, I mean, the app I was using on Android is really, really good, and it does all scheduled downloads and things like that. So, yeah, I'm looking for something that's going to replace that. I know Brincast is an option, but I thought I'd try the Microsoft one. But Richard in the chat room, hello Richard, he says, the podcast app, lots of missing features, doesn't even have a live tile or an indication of what podcasts have in your episodes until you go right down into the audio list. I might go back. I used to use Podcaster, which I might go back to.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's something that I found. The Microsoft Podcast app was really basic, which is why I quite like Brincast, that automatically adds things into the playlist, and you can reorder them quite simply. The interface with Brincast can be a bit cluttered, but once you get used to its idiosyncrasies, it's quite nice. But yeah, no, so I just kind of got on better with that. But I have kept the Microsoft Podcast app installed, and my plan was that when I saw some updates to it, I might give it another try. But
yeah,
so I haven't seen anything. But I'll tell you one thing. Talking about apps that need an update, disappointingly, the Copilot app is pretty horribly broken on the 930. And looking through recent reviews, I'm not the only one. It's got a couple of issues. One, the the UI hasn't scaled properly to the phone, so the buttons at the bottom kind of drop off the bottom of the screen, because obviously it's the first, well, along with yours, the first proper 1080p screen. So that scaling needs to be fixed. But worse than that, when I tried to use it for directions, it kept jumping me, driving up the M1 to the airport, and it kept jumping me onto, every time I went over a road, over a bridge with a road underneath, it would jump me onto that road.
Oh.
And then it had me going in the opposite direction, and it just, I don't know why. It's I guess it just needs an update. Although I noticed yesterday that in the store, the app, because I was looking for the reviews to see if anyone else was having a similar problem, and the app showed us last updated on the 11th of August. But you get the notifications now when apps are updated. I didn't get the notification, but when I went into the app, my version matched with the one in the store, and I wonder whether or not actually what had been updated was maybe a description or some kind of store information as opposed to the actual app itself.
Yeah, because you can go and update things in the store. If the bill doesn't get updated, then obviously it doesn't really deliver anything.
Yeah, but disappointingly, just before we left to go on holiday, I actually resubscribed to the traffic information, and then 20 minutes after getting off the drive, it was like, I really can't use this, and had to resort to the Drive app.
Yeah, that was a question that Richard just asked. Why not use Here Drive? Because I've started to use that, and I think it's pretty good actually.
It is really good, but both myself and my wife have had experiences where it can take you on some really minor roads. So I think we talked about this before.
We did,
we went up to Sherwood Forest, and I used Nokia Drive on the way, and it took me a really bizarre route. We ended up going down like some single track lanes to get as we got near to our destination. And when I used Copilot on the way back, it just stuck me onto main roads. Made the journey much better. And I've had that a number of times with the Nokia Drive app. It does seem to take you on some very minor roads. Admittedly, probably the shortest route, but not necessarily a route you would really want to take. So that's mainly why I tend to avoid it. And also, the Nokia Drive doesn't have the facility to redirect. So if I'm going on a longer journey, I like the fact that Copilot will pop up the fact that there's a significant delay and would you like to reroute, whereas the Nokia Drive will tell you that the roads are busy, but it doesn't necessarily automatically reroute.
Right. Yeah, that's something I noticed with the Google navigation. If you were coming up to a road where you could maybe turn right and it would be an alternative route, it says +3 or +5 or whatever to tell you how much longer that route would take, which is quite a nice feature. So you can then decide yourself, okay, well, we can go this way, but it's 10 minutes longer. But I noticed Here didn't do that. But I used Here when I was in Scotland the other week, and it did take, if any, it did the exact opposite than the Google application did for what you've just said. So on the way there, I think I used the Google navigation, and it took me down some of the minor roads. And on the way back, one small part of it, Here Maps, took me on sort of a slight detour, but it was a major road, so it must be just the way that they do the mapping.
Yeah, the one thing I will say though, before we left, I downloaded the Maps for Portugal offline from Here Maps. And because I'd had that bad experience with Copilot, I didn't even try that in Portugal. So I used Here Drive, and I have to say it was brilliant. It really, it still gave me directions. It showed, going the correct way around roundabouts, given that you're driving on the right hand side of the road. And it was quite interesting listening to it to pronounce some of the Portugal street names. But apart from that, I mean, that it really did impress me with that, because given that you're these apps tend to be written for kind of premium, for the main countries like UK and US and bigger places, and Portugal is not necessarily a massive place when you look on the map, but it performed flawlessly.
And Richard said, although it did the Nokia Drive did disgrace itself from crashing 3 minutes from his destination, and he says a pro tip is the toll roads are turned off by default on the Drive, and you've got to turn that. I noticed that actually, yeah, because I was planning a route south and it wouldn't take me on the M6 toll, and it was for that very reason.
Yeah, the one thing I do use every day though is I do use the My Commute facility of Nokia Drive. I use that every day, just not because it redirects you, but as you pass alternative routes, it tells you how long that route will take. So when you've realised that the traffic's busy or blocked and you've taken an alternative route, it remembers that as an alternative, and as it kind of prompts you that additional drive time. So I do use that every day. Interesting, Copilot, they introduced a commute feature where it learns your route. So rather than it directing you what it thinks is the best route, it does the same thing as Nokia Drive, where it learns, what route you prefer to take. What I found with Copilot was that it still told me to turn left and turn right. It's like, I don't really need that on the way to work, whereas Nokia Drive, it just shows you the route. It doesn't do any of the speech navigation. I like the fact that you've got the live tiles, so it tells me, how long, when I leave work, how long it's likely to take. And
one thing I did, I found, and I talked about this last week, Gary, is the traffic detail is more detailed on Google Maps. So the road that I get onto the motorway, it isn't on here. Maps doesn't have any traffic information, but on Google Maps it does, and it actually does make a difference to my route home depending on the traffic. But I did a post on this as well. I use an app called I think it's called Gmaps Plus. Gmaps Plus, and that uses the Here map, the downloaded Here Maps, but overlays the Google traffic information on it. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, which is a nice alternative.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. But because one thing that did happen last week was the release of the developer preview update, and I resisted the urge to install it while I was away. I thought the last thing I need when I need my phone to get back to the airport is to end up doing something I regret. So I did hold off that. But we talk about it quite often, limited bandwidth, particularly mine now compared to yours. But it was great because loads of OneDrive folders that I want to keep offline on the Lumia 2520, I tested the connection in the apartment we had, and it was like 10 megs. It's like, right, set all the folders I want to be offline and just watch them download.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So that was quite neat.
Do you have a comment from Doug? Who this came through the Google Plus site? He says, "What rain?" Says a San Diego, California dude. So hello to California and San Diego, but we get a bit of rain here, and we've had some. I'm sure it's a cast-off American hurricane that we've had the rain from, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, I think it's what is it? It's downgraded Hurricane Bertha, I think it is.
Yeah. It's as usual, we get cast-offs, but
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so that's one of the things we want to talk about tonight. Windows Phone 8.1 update, which Gary and I talked about last week, but we'll talk about that. There's quite a bit of Xbox news, some Surface news, so there's quite a bit to talk about tonight. So
I'll tell you one thing we do have to talk about.
What's
SoftSled?
Yes, SoftSled is here.
It's only about 5-6 years too late, but yes, that was the first thing that popped into my head when I heard the announcement. But anyway,
that's what I thought exactly. Yeah. So we'll come back to that. So I just want to talk about Windows Phone 8.1 update then. So I know you didn't heard last week, so I'll just say the way that I got it on mine, so I got my 1520 fully updated, was to roll it back using the Nokia tool, put it on 8.0. It got the 8.1 update, it got the Cyan update, and that was okay. So then I installed the developer preview and then got the update.
Yeah, so not too many hoops then.
No, it took the best part of the day, I think. But
yeah, I bet. And of course, well, I guess you haven't had the phone all that long, but you would have lost all your any game progress, etc. Anything that didn't sync.
Yeah, there was nothing really that really. In fact, I took the opportunity to redo all my live tiles anyway. So, but it works really well, doesn't it? Have you? So did you say you've actually got it installed yet?
Yes, it was. I did it the day after we got home, and I was tempted to actually wait because with the 930 only just having it and with it coming with Cyan, I kind of part of me wanted to keep it a bit clean. But I know you guys were talking about it, and we were talking on Twitter, because one thing I was really curious to know is there an associated firmware pack update, and I haven't heard of anything, and that was my main worry, that would some features maybe be a bit hit and miss as they were with the Windows Phone 8.1 preview, because it didn't have the firmware. But no, I decided that I would take the plunge, and it was relatively painless. And I'm actually using something that, a bit like the Action Center. I'm actually using something that I have probably said in the past that I really don't see the need for, and that's the folders.
Yeah, I think that's everybody's reaction. I thought the same thing. Having used folders on Android and iOS, I didn't think Windows Phone needed them, but actually now I've got them set up, I really like them.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've done is I've kind of stuck all my games into a folder, but because I like to have them on my home screen, but I also probably don't use them as much as I would like, and so it's quite nice to have them tucked away in a small tile, and then you just tap it and it expands a bit, similar to the way that iOS and I'm sure Android does, but I just there's a reason why I like Windows Phone, and the fact they've implemented that in the live folders so that you still see live tiles flipping around. And I noticed that if you have a wide tile, it shows each of the tiles in the folder as small tiles, but each one in rotation pops up to be slightly bigger, and then you still get the live tile. So I've put all my kind of Fitbit related apps, and I can still see at a glance, how many steps I've taken and things like that.
Yeah, I mean I really like the folders. I've got my sort of navigation one, so I've got here and all the Drive apps and all the other bits and pieces. So I've got them in one folder, and GMAP Plus and whatever, and I've got my social in another, but you still get the benefits of the live tile, which is what I really like.
Yes, yeah, I mean, I think they do seem to be implementing these features, really give it some thought before they do it. I mean, it does make them a bit slower to react, I guess, when they're trying to catch up, but I like the way that the Action Center works. I like the way that the live folders works, and so yeah, it's certainly something I use. And as Richard says, the first thing I did when I had 8.1 on the 920 was to implement 3 column tiles, and I really couldn't go back now, I don't think.
Yeah, it's a nice little idea, the folders and the screen layouts, and like I was saying to Gary last week, all these little things, they don't seem like a lot, an Action Center and everything else, but when you put them all together, it makes for a very usable operating system. And in fact, this week I've ordered a Nano SIM for my main SIM. So currently I've got the 1520 and the Nexus 5, and the Nexus 5 has got my phone SIM in it, and the 1520 has got my data SIM in it. But I'm actually going to switch them around.
Oh, right, okay.
And go full time with the 1520, because it does everything that I want it to do. So I didn't originally envisage doing that. I always thought I would have the 1520 as a sort of a tablet, a small tablet, and use it for data, and just keep the Nexus 5 as my main phone. But I'm actually going to switch it around, and so as soon as the SIM comes in, I'm fully Windows phoned.
There's a sentence I didn't think I'd hear in quite a while.
and that,
not yet, anyway.
Yeah, and that's what I don't know. How long is it since I got the 8X? 2 years ago, something like that.
Must be quite a while, I think.
And that was the last time I tried it, really. And then I didn't do it because I particularly wanted to. I did it as an experiment to see if I could do it. This time I'm doing it because I actually prefer using it. So it just shows you, really. And there's a few apps that aren't the Facebook and the Twitter apps. They're not as good as their Android equivalents. But the browser, certainly the browser's as good since the update anyway. Action Center's there, so I've got podcasts here, maps. Google integration is not good for Google Music, but I've just put everything on Xbox Music, and I've got a month of free trial on the Xbox to see whether I need that and switch from Google Music. But so far I've not been really using any of the Xbox Music subscription features, just been using the standard features. So I'm going to see how I can get on with that as well, and maybe that'll save me from I'll get rid of the Play Music subscription and just stick with Xbox Music.
Yeah, I mean, I actually extended my Xbox Music subscription for 1 month purely because it expired so close to us going away, and I didn't want the hassle of deleting those downloaded music files and then copying over my music files and hoping that the library might update correctly to recognise the local files and not duplicate things or anything like that. So yeah, so I've extended mine by a month, but I'm still a bit mixed on what to do going forward, just purely because, interestingly enough, I actually came across another album while I was on holiday that had been removed from the store, and it was like, well, I've got that album at home, but I haven't got it with me, so now I can't listen to it. which is a bit frustrating.
But the one nice thing about Xbox Music, from my point of view, would be that if I do use my Nexus, I can still use Xbox Music on it. Whereas I can't really do it the other way around. Yes, there is the Cloud Music app, but it's temperamental, and I suspect that's an API issue. And certainly the streaming stuff's okay, but it's the pin or the downloading of albums seems a bit hit and miss, and there was no easy way of doing it. So I think for cross-platform, the best approach is Xbox Music, which is quite something to discuss before. That's a sort of change from a few years ago.
Yes, yeah, no, absolutely. It's amazing how far they've come in such a short period of time. But it's. I think I had Paul Thurrott say this, and I hadn't really thought about it before, but it is Microsoft returning to their roots. If you think about Windows NT, used to run on RISC processors and all sorts. It really was a cross-platform operating system. And with Microsoft now supporting the ARM architecture, and as you say, having their apps running across platforms, it's kind of a bit of a return back to their past.
Yeah, and I love the Nokia apps. The camera app is fantastic on the 1520, and that's one thing I've really been using it for a lot, which is one of the reasons why I'm going to change it around as well. So I had a few days out, and I took the 1520 and took some really good pictures with it, and the motion blur, and all the little things with the camera app you can do are really nice, and you can have some sort of fun with it on the phone as well. So you can take a picture using the smart sequence, and then you can sort of play around with it afterwards, and I thought it was really good. So, really nice way of doing some photos, and it's even got the thing. Have you seen the thing where you take a picture, a standard still image, but then when you open the gallery, you get a few frames before it, which is kind of nice.
Yes, the living images. I haven't really played around with that, but one thing I did, you mentioned the where you take like 10 pictures in one. It was great trying to capture pictures of the kids jumping into the pool and getting them as they actually kind of mid-air kind of thing. It just makes it so easy, and I know it's nothing unique to Windows Phone, but it just works so simply. The fact that you've just got the feature straight there. Yeah,
I quite like that, and there's a pretty decent Flickr app for Windows Phone as well. There is a Windows Phone 7 Flickr app, but it's from Flickr, but it's pretty bad. But the Flickr Central is a third-party app, and I've been using that as well. So far, I'm pretty happy with this. I really like this phone. It's a great phone, and I'm definitely switching full time. So I've been quite pleased with that. And of course, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say that leaves everybody bar my wife now in using Windows Phone.
Yeah. I did have a quick play around with Cortana on Sunday. So when we got home, we got home late Saturday night, kind of early Sunday morning. So one of the first things to do was kind of go out and get some rations on Sunday. And so I set a reminder to get some milk when I got to our local Waitrose store, and pulled up into the car park, and up it popped. Although ironically, I was kind of sat in the car park for a couple of minutes playing around with the phone before it popped up. Now, obviously, it would have popped up in the store eventually. But I guess what I was more hoping is that as I got within a couple of miles of the store, it might have popped up. Whether or not that's something that would improve over time, or if it isn't, I haven't found any way that you can set a radius, on the actual alerts, on the location alerts. But it is quite nice, being able to do kind of follow on queries. I was chatting to a guy who's got Siri, and he's quite interested in Cortana, and I was saying about how you could do follow on questions like what's in my calendar today, and then what's up next. And he said that Siri doesn't do that kind of combination type queries. It doesn't link things together. I know the one that Joe Belfiore used was, what's the temperature, and what's that in Kelvin, and what's that in centigrade, and it's that kind of follow-on questioning seems to work quite nicely.
Yeah, I think the Cortana works actually pretty well, especially if you're driving. You can just hold down the search button. And I know with your Bluetooth you can trigger it through Bluetooth, but I haven't until I swapped SIMs. I've not done that. And you can just say, "Play me some music," and it just shuffles your music and plays it. So it's pretty good for the sort. You can say, "How long will it take me to get home?" and it tells you. And I thought that was pretty good. I did try that notification thing, and I said, "Remind me to send an email to such a person when I get to work." and it created the reminder, okay, and it reminded me about it when I was on my way home that evening. So something a little bit.
Because there are two reminders, aren't there? There's one when you get to the location, and one that when as you leave.
Yeah.
But I mean, one thing I have found that does work quite well. I mean, obviously I'm kind of intrigued and playing around with it at the moment. So in the morning, I kind of said, how's the traffic on my trip to work? And it came up and said, traffic's moving freely, which is considering they said they were going to kind of UK, make it more UK oriented. That's quite an Americanism. But yeah, it said, the traffic's flowing freely. It will take you about 22 minutes, and then it prompted me, why don't you try get me there? So I did that, and it literally plotted my route, started up Nokia Drive, and away it went. So as I say, that kind of follow-on questioning, does seem to work quite nicely. But then I also get little odd things, which I'm sure that is a beta, so this thing will improve over time. But like, for example, I asked Cortana, what have I got coming up today? And the first time I tried it, it immediately brought up my calendar and read out the events. But when I've tried it a couple of times since, it just does a web search for what have I got coming up today. So it seems to be a bit hit and miss from that perspective.
In fact, when it first launched on the Monday when you were away, none of the integration worked. So it had no kind of personality at all. So if you said like, is it going to rain today? It would just Google it or Bing it. It was just everything just went to a Bing search, so it was like it had a complete lobotomy. But at some point that got switched on Monday evening, so by Tuesday it had sort of got that personality. My kids think it's great, they keep saying, "Sing me a song," and which is better, Bing or Google? Which is which is better, Xbox or PlayStation? They're always getting it to do that.
Yeah.
But I thought some of the stuff is quite useful, especially the trying to use it hands-free. I think once I get it paired up with Bluetooth, and if you can just tap Bluetooth, which is what I do with Google now on the Android phone. But
yeah,
I think it's good. In fact, I was going to video this, but with the kids on Saturday, we put my iPad on the table and the Nexus and my 1520, and we were sort of pressing the buttons at the same time and asking the questions to see which one worked better. And we found that the Android Google Now was much faster at responding. So you could ask it, what's the weather today, and it would come back with an instant response. Cortana would think about it for a bit and then come back with the response about the same time as the iPad. But the iPad and Siri and Cortana had some kind of personality, whereas Google Now is just the facts. It's just so we actually sort of playing with it. We actually preferred the Siri and Cortana over Google Now for personality, but it's faster on Android. But it's a nice little fun feature, and sometimes it is quite useful.
Yeah, I think like Richard says, I've got the opposite problem that my eldest son Ellis Cortana thinks he's Alice, which he's definitely not amused about. But also, I was setting up my inner circle, and I put my wife's nickname in as Debs, DEBS, and when I tried to use it, every time it thought I said Dad. So, but what was quite neat, while frustrating that didn't work properly, it did say, I need to know who your dad is before I can use that keyword, which I thought was quite a clever way, rather than you having to go all the way back out, and it kind of just flowed through, so you could quite easily add that as add that person into your inner circle.
Yeah, but it's a nice little feature. I've been quite pleased with that. So overall, my impressions of the Cyan update, and which is the Cyan update's got the tracking on there, hasn't it? It shows you how many steps you've taken and all that as well, like a Fitbit, which is pretty good.
Yeah, and I've done some comparisons. It's actually pretty good at estimating. The only thing I find is that, for example, when I get home, my phone pretty much goes on the wireless charging pad and doesn't move unless I need to use it. So from that perspective, the Fitbit wrist bracelet that I've got actually works better for me. But in terms of during the day, it's actually quite accurate.
That's the thing, that I might get a wireless charger. I know you said about the car ones, but the Nokia ones are so expensive. But the Nokia in-car wireless one would be nice, just to put it in and not have to plug a cable in each time you get in the car. But I think it was like 50-something quid. It seems a lot of money.
Yeah, and I've unfortunately been through two because I bought one for me and my wife, and mine broke with the 920, so I have no idea what it'd be like with the 930. But because I sometimes drive her car, I actually ended up breaking hers as well. Her 820 fitted in nicely, but the 930 just it was just a couple of notches. That one notch was still too loose, and the next notch it was kind of bending the arms out, and so eventually just the arms just broke and just flopped. So yeah, it's quite frustrating. But yeah, so it's for something that's not quite, not cheap. And when I tried to, because it was outside of the time when Amazon would take it as a return, I tried contacting Nokia, and it was like, well, you need to take it into one of your local stores, which for me is like a 30-mile drive. It's just ridiculous to try and return something like that.
So I'm gonna play and see what other stuff we can get with it. The Xbox Music was updated over the weekend as well. So have you found that better? I seem to find it a bit quicker.
I haven't had a chance to try. I mean, to be honest, I don't tend to use the phone for music. I really do that through the tablet, primarily because when a couple of times when I did try to use the phone with a Bluetooth headphones that I bought, every time I got a text, it needed me to say cancel or ignore. When you sit in the middle of the office, you don't really want to sit there saying ignore. So I started listening through the tablet, but also with the tablet having the 64 gig SSD in it, I can literally put all my music on there. So I just tend to use that.
Right. Well, I found it seemed to be a bit quicker, although I only really started using the music last week, so I haven't really had a huge amount of experience with the old version. But I did notice it did seem to be a bit quicker, and there's some nice little things in there, like you can see just your SD card or just your phone or whatever. But I put a 32 gig SD card in there, so I've got all my music on there, which works really well.
Yeah, because with 1520 you've got the micro SD expansion, haven't you?
Yeah, so I've got
that. Which with the 930 you don't have.
Right. So that's working pretty well actually. So I've put the apps on the phone and the music and videos on the SD card, and what seems quite good, I thought it would sort of wipe the card somehow, but it doesn't. It left the stuff that was already on there, which there was music already on there, so it's just sort of integrated that.
That works quite well then.
Yeah. Now, switching over to another Microsoft platform I'm going to talk about tonight, Xbox One. There's a few things actually since while you were away actually, and a couple of announcements today. So there's been some kind of media event today. Can't remember.
Yeah, Gamescom, I think it is.
And in combination with that and a couple of other articles, there's been a lot of the Xbox has gone from Xbox One has gone from sort of an occasional media player to something that could actually be really what we kind of hoped it would be at the initial vision. So there's a few things. So let's talk about the first announcement, which was last week, which was the digital TV tuner for the Xbox One.
Yeah, I certainly didn't see that coming. I mean, I guess it's, and I talked about some slight frustrations when I tried plugging our set-top box through the Xbox One. So I think it's maybe a way, particularly with the TV stand has been a bit more open in this country. It's a great way to get TV free over-the-air TV directly into the Xbox One with pause and rewind and fast-forward support. Although no record, no scheduled recording, I noticed. Although I'm sure that wouldn't be difficult to add. Well, yeah, this is the thing when I saw it was announced. So it's Freeview compatible, Freeview HD. I think it supports DVB-C, and DVB-T and T2. Is it DVB-S? Because that's satellite, isn't
satellite. Maybe it's not. Maybe it was T.
Yeah, I think it's just coax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll support Freeview HD, so you can just plug your aerial lead straight into it, and it looks like I think it's USB by the looks of it.
Yes, I haven't seen anywhere where if you could use two.
I don't know.
Expect not.
No,
yeah,
expect not. Yeah. Well, initially you would said you don't need it because you can't watch two things at once. But more.
Yes, that's true.
But actually, that may be an option. So yeah, it's a little cheap. I can't remember the price. I think it was £20 odd, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty cheap. I mean, I wish there was a satellite version as well, because I can't use the coax version because our TV's not anywhere near. That's why the DVB Link solution works so well for us. But yeah, I mean, I certainly didn't see it coming, and it's a great little box.
Now they say that they're launching it in Europe first because of perhaps we don't use cable boxes as much in this country as they do in the States, and like you said, it's slightly more open. Although they've got the ATSC standard they could use, but So this is not going to work for Sky, but obviously with the Sky integration, you can use the HDMI pass-through if you want to. But I think this is a nice little way of adding a TV tuner to a box, and I thought, well, maybe that brings it closer to Windows Media Center. But so that was my initial thought. Well, that's not a bad idea, quite nice. But then the feature that they announced today is Stream TV to Smart Glass.
Yes, soft sled.
Yeah. So this means that if you've got the tuner plugged into your Xbox, you can pick up your Surface or your Windows Phone or your Android phone or your iPad and watch live TV stream from the Xbox One, which is, like you said, almost soft sled. And I'm surprised they've done that as well. It's a great feature, but again, I didn't see that one coming.
No, and it's even something that you can use while someone's actually using the Xbox One to play games. I mean, it's a great alternative to Media Center on the so I can't get my words out, on a Surface device. It's and obviously it would probably will work with Surface RT. But yeah, I think it's a great little solution, especially with the fact it supports the pausing and rewinding of live TV. It's whether or not in the future that would integrate then with the TV catch-up services. If you could get some of the catch-up TV services apps like iPlayer, which I believe is coming by the end of the year, and I believe 4AD and Channel 5 are already on there. If it could integrate with that, that would be a great little solution.
Obviously, there must be for rewinding and pause to work. There must be a buffer, and it's effectively recording it. So
yes.
Surely it can't be that far off. Microsoft announcing sort of proper DVR functions, that must be coming, because it's only extending that functionality a little bit. I mean, you've already got on-demand live TV streaming, so there's not that far removed to say, well, okay, even if there's no one around, start streaming it and just buffer it and stick it on the hard drive. So you would think that's got to be coming.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I mean, it would certainly be something that we would be tempted to look at, and also I think. The one guide, when I played around with it, did work really, really well. And I think another part of the announcement was the fact that you're going to be able to set the Xbox One to boot directly into TV. So there's definitely some serious commitment behind this. And
it's almost as if someone from the Media Center team has gone over there, because that's one of the things that we used to want, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you think Charlie's working on that too? He was part of the Xbox team, wasn't he? So you never know.
So, I mean, this, and then you mentioned the other thing, Bixby iPlayer. We were wondering if that was coming, and it is. iPlayer is coming as an app to the Xbox One, which is great news.
Yeah, and I'm not entirely sure the story's changed very much, because we knew it was coming, and it's still coming.
Yeah.
I guess we know it now. It should be by the end of the year, but it does seem to be taking a long time. But and
the other huge missing functionality of the Xbox One is playing local media.
Yes, yeah. Actually, sorry, just going back, actually, the one thing that they could do, as I just said, instead of actually introducing recording TV, all they actually really need to do is just integrate with the catch-up TV services like YouView does. If they could integrate that into the guide, then actually it doesn't need to record anything.
No, that's right. You could just say, I want to watch this show, and it'll just download it when it's available. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to think that kind of thing's coming.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And I noticed with the Skybox, I don't know how long they've been doing this. It's probably, I've noticed it because I've got the better broadband now, but if you get one of the catch-up shows on download, it actually starts download. You can watch it before it's finished downloading.
Mm-hmm.
And with me having the decent bandwidth now, it's almost instant as well, but it's in good quality HD. So it's not actual streaming technically, but it's downloading and you can watch it as soon as it's started. So if they could introduce,
sorry, go on.
Yeah, if they could introduce that kind of integration where you could, like you said, like a YouView does and like the Sky Plus book seems to do, is pick a show and it'll start downloading it and you can watch it, even though it hasn't finished downloading it. Sort of like, so there's not much lag on it. Then it's a good system.
Yeah.
So the other big story, really, the big feature is local media playback, which surprisingly is something that the Xbox One currently doesn't do.
Yes.
So what they're introducing here is a new media player that will play from a USB attached drive and a pretty wide range of formats, including MKV and MPEG-2 TS. Initially, it's only going to support local attached storage, so USB drives, but they are going to enable DLNA support at some point. So theoretically, you could set up Media Browser, XBMC, various DLNA servers, Windows Media Player, and stream content to your Xbox that way. And you could use DV-Link as well, so you could get live TV using DLNA. So it certainly introduced a lot of options for the Xbox One.
Yes, I hadn't even thought about the DV-Link, that's a DLNA server. So yeah, no, you're right. I mean, that would certainly be another way to get live TV on there. But yeah, but it's certainly interesting to see those features coming back. I mean, obviously it's something that the Xbox 360 had, and something that really is quite missed from the Xbox One. And as you mentioned, in the wide range of formats, including MKVs, is another turnaround for Microsoft. They've tended to shy away from those type of formats because of the reputation of them. So yeah, I think that's I mean, along with the existing USB expansion support from external drives they already have in the Xbox One, it's another important feature, I think, one that certainly many people would make use of.
Yeah, I mean, there are times you've got. I mean, I've got the VidaBox server up here that I just put my Blu-rays in, and it automatically converts them to it creates a copy of the Blu-ray, so you can watch it as a Blu-ray through XBMC or Dune or something like that. But I've also set it up to make MP4 copies of the movie as well. So that would be perfect for streaming on the Xbox One. So it would be another nice way of doing it. And currently, if I want to do something like that, I can't use the Xbox One. I've got to use my DVD player or something. Or if someone gives you a video file that's obviously legal video file on a USB drive or something like that, you want to watch. It's a bit of a faff with the Xbox One at the moment. So this is going to make a big difference. This is kind of that X1 device thing, isn't it? That's coming together slowly. It's almost like a year late, but it's coming.
Yes. Yeah.
And I wonder to see what Gary thinks. I wonder whether these functions are enough to tip him to want to get an Xbox One. I don't know. Probably not at the moment, but it's probably getting close.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is. It's quite interesting, really, given that on the earnings call they were going to focus Xbox One on games.
Yeah.
Here's a ton of media news. It's it's certainly quite interesting. But I think it's always the case. We've talked about. Let's face it, the Xbox One and the PS4 launched too early. I'm sure Microsoft and Sony ideally would have wanted to wait another year, but they knew neither. If they waited a year, their competitor would have launched early, so they had to do it. And I think also in this day and age, technology is so easily updatable that these boxes came along with probably relatively almost beta operating systems, and they're just getting updated over time. And it's bringing back features from the Xbox 360, but like anything, when you switch architecture, you've got to report everything, and it takes time. But it's certainly good to see this stuff coming back, because we know what Microsoft's like. Sometimes they commit to bring things, and then they get diverted, or their interest turns to something else, and that they deem more important, and it never comes. So it's good to see.
Yeah, I'm really impressed, and it is a bit of a surprise, especially the TV tuner stuff.
Yes,
I was quite surprised.
Definitely.
Soft sled lives.
Yeah, I mean, what was the definition of soft sled? It was
software media sensor extended.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, live TV on any device.
Live TV and recorded TV.
Yeah. So I just want to jump back, because I missed where Richard had mentioned in the chat room about the Lumia 920. He's asking if I've managed to get Cyan onto it. I haven't, because my 920, which my wife has now inherited, is a T-Mobile locked. So looking at the availability page, which I'll put in the chat room actually, it's not actually been okayed. So the Lumia 920 on it gets classed as everything everywhere, which is T-Mobile, Orange, and EE, is still under testing. Although Richard mentions he's got an unlocked, but even the country variant still shows as under testing, which, and again, I think Paul Thurrott was talking about this. It just seems odd that the country variants get delayed, because they're not linked to any carrier. It's almost like it's not ready.
Yeah, it's very strange, that, isn't it?
Yeah. So long story short, to answer Richard's question, no, I haven't got it onto the 920. Just simply that it's still under testing, so it's not even available yet. And normally, EE are pretty late to the game in terms of they're normally one of the last carriers to release it.
Yeah, I noticed on that list. I think they're the last, sort of the last of them to get it. I mean, the way that I knew mine would work was because actually I think the unlocked 1520s are from Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as the country variant Hong Kong ROM with Cyan was available, that's when I wiped mine, and it did pick up the update. So I think you've got to check that list and make sure yours sort of matches with whichever region is and whichever version of firmware you've got.
Yeah, and also in the Nokia in settings, if you go to the extras and info app and then do more info, you'll see which carrier and which country your phone is actually from. So my 930 shows up as like a CV, and then I think it says UK, whereas my 920 shows up as kind of T-Mobile.
Mm. Yeah, but yeah, it's getting that on is a bit tricky. But once you get it on, then you can go through the whole upgrade path. But you've got to wait until it's advertised.
Yeah, so again, in Richard's case, even if he did go back to stock Windows Phone 8, he still wouldn't be offered the Cyan update at this point.
A couple of things I want to mention as well. August firmware updates for the Surface Pro 3, Surface Pro, and Surface RT, but nothing for the Pro 2 or the Surface 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's still good to see the original Surface RT, get updated. It's must be getting quite long in the tooth now. But yeah, I think the Surface Pro 3, there's quite a bit around the power keyboard, wasn't there? And I didn't see anything to do with Wi-Fi, I don't think.
No, there wasn't anything actually. Someone asked me on Twitter whether is it the Wi-Fi fix, but they really did introduce that last time, didn't they? So, although I think there still are issues around it.
Yeah. I know Richard says he's very tempted by a Surface Pro 3, and so am I. I think at some point when my work laptop finally gives it the go, so I think that's what I'll be looking to replace it with. But still slightly nervous. I mean, I still sometimes sit in the lounge of an evening working, and I'm not sure that the Surface Pro 3 is quite capable in that scenario.
Mm. What else?
But if anyone's interested in selling me a Surface Pro 2 dock, I would certainly be interested in buying that.
Yeah, they never even arrived here, did they?
No, and I think Mary Jo Foley said that was it. She found some info. Had some info from before that it was never planned to release outside the US.
Right.
Which it's disappointing because we've talked about it on the show. That was my plan, to get rid of the desktop PC and just have the dock for the Surface Pro 2, so that when we needed a PC type environment, we'd just dock my wife's Surface Pro 2. So I think we'd have to, if I can't get hold of one, I think I'll just have to get a Pro 3 dock and upgrade her Surface.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, now what else I want to mention? Yeah. So that was the Surface Pro update. So, and also we've got the Windows 8.1 update, but I talked about it last week, Gary. Actually, it's pretty lackluster. There's not a huge amount in there. I think the only thing of interest was the Miracast API. So there's not really a huge amount in that one, but Microsoft took the sort of the unusual step of pre-announcing the changes as well, but there's not a lot in there.
Yeah, I think I mean, ironically, I so nearly took my my Netgear Miracast device on holiday with us, and I so wish I had now, because the TV in the apartment, I could have thrown the kids were watching the Lego Movie on my Lumia through Xbox Video, which I downloaded before we went, and it would have been great to throw that onto the TV. I just don't know why I didn't take it with me. But yeah, in terms of this update, I think the content of it, as you say, is pretty uninteresting. But what is really interesting is that they actually went out their way to post and say the fact that this isn't going to be classed as update 2. This is just a maintenance cycle, which is now the way that they're going to detail, Patch Tuesday now, which they shied away from before because enterprises hated it. Patch Tuesday is now going to reintroduce the additional features type updates. Yeah,
it's just strange. They've been backwards and forwards on this so much. I remember, I think it was in the Windows 2000 days, wasn't it? There was going to be no more features in service packs, and there was going to be feature packs and service packs, and they've gone one way or the other on this so many times. But yeah, like you're saying, this is now the way, is that the features will come down in Windows updates, but whether they'll hold off on features for the next version of Windows, which I did want to talk about actually, Threshold release. Well, I guess they're holding stuff back for Threshold now.
Yes, yeah.
Which is
I think
what's rumoured, wasn't it, about this start menu?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's also interesting that this update 2, which we're not supposed to refer to it as, but it is an optional update. So whether or not that's their kind of get out of jail card, that these additional features will be optional updates that you need to manually go in and choose to have, which obviously gets around the enterprise issues. You know, they can either exclude it through Windows Server Update Services, or just not allow it. But I've worked in smaller companies that they don't use Windows Server Update Services, and quite a few of the developers, because they were quite technically orientated, would go in and always select the optional updates, which I guess in a smaller company it's two ways looking at it, isn't it? You've got people that are probably more experienced with looking after their own kit, but at the same time, if you're trying to keep a standardized or relatively standardized infrastructure, it can be quite a challenge. But yeah.
But these updates, I mean, there's not a lot of. I suppose there's a SharePoint sort of switch and something like that, but there's nothing huge interesting for enterprise.
Yeah, and as Richard says in the chat room, he's spent an evening cleaning malware off his daughter's laptop, and that is the very reason why I really like using the Lumia and the Surface RT and Surface 2. Before that, it's you just don't have any of those concerns, and it just acts like an iPad/Android device. It's just instant on. It's you haven't got the temptation to install anything that's not available in the store, and it just works really, really well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm quite happy with my kids having Surfaces and Windows phones, because I know it's there's less hands-on maintenance. So especially when you see what the Android phone was like, with the pop-up notifications that are on there before we got rid of that. Now some other updates we need to mention as well this week. There's updated build of My Movies 5.1. In fact, there's since we last talked, there's My Movies 5.1 pre-release of it as well. So this is a new version of My Movies, which looks pretty good actually. There's lots of fixes in there and things like that, but always a lot of people are always interested in those. Also, there's an updated build of Media Browser as well. So that's the server portion of Media Browser. So that's my next project actually, is to install a Media Browser on my server and see what we can do with that as well, because they've got clients for Windows Phone and iOS. And what I found, I've got all this data on the server and I can watch it on the Surface, but there's not a lot of good sort of media streaming clients for Windows Phone. I think Media Browser may be the answer to that. I don't know whether it's not something I guess you do very often. You generally use a tablet, don't you, to stream video?
Yeah.
But if you want to, there's not a huge amount of choice available. Now, the other interesting thing I want to mention is I don't know if you saw this Kickstarter project that someone has launched today called Slice.
No, I haven't seen that.
So this is, you may remember you got the Raspberry Pi, and the Raspberry Pi Foundation released a compute module, which is kind of like a modular version of the Raspberry Pi, designed for other projects rather than just a standalone solution. And someone's got a Kickstarter project called Slice, which is an XBMC-based Raspberry Pi media center. So it's a little box with a remote control. Now there's quite a few XBMC boxes. In fact, that Vidon box I tested a couple of weeks ago, that runs XBMC. But this is a little project. So I think it's like a Kickstarter project. You get £100 will get you the device and whatever. But they've got a nice skin for XBMC that goes with it, and it's got 25 RGB LED lights that go around the inside of the case. So they've got some nice customization on the case. But nice little project. So I'll include a link for that in show notes in case anybody's interested in that.
Yeah. One of the interesting things is that they've thought to include a USB host support, so you can just literally plug it in and it'll be recognised as a USB device for copying files over to it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That was quite interesting, because sometimes it keeps you think, well, how do we get this data on there? You do it over the network, or whatever, but you can just unplug it all, plug it into your PC, copy the file over, and then plug it back into your TV. So it's quite a nice little idea. That I think that's one of the not see many others do it that way.
No.
What else have we got?
The one thing, the other thing that the Xbox One announced, which the PlayStation 4 already has is support for pre-purchasing of digital games. I think the Forza Horizon 2 is going to be the first one where you'll actually be able to purchase and download the game and then play it at the point of release. So we'll kind of be sitting there, waiting.
Yeah, I like the idea of that. And I think probably the Horizons is probably the one that I would do that with. I do like my driving games.
Yeah, I like the digressing slightly, but I like the first Horizon game. So I think that is something that I'm kind of waiting for. And obviously the kids are absolutely desperate to get Minecraft on the Xbox One. And I think in some ways that will kind of almost signal the end of our time with the Xbox 360, which I think will probably get retired eventually up to maybe the kids' room as a way, or might just be stored in such a way that we can quite easily plug it into the fourth port on the side of the TV for times when it is needed. But yeah, I think the only real game after that I'll be waiting for is the next Red Dead Redemption. But yeah, I think with Minecraft and Forza Horizon 2, that will be our tipping point when the Xbox 360 probably doesn't even get touched anymore. Yeah,
now they're still using their Xbox 360, so it's the Xbox One is downstairs. They've got my old Xbox is upstairs now, so they're quite happy with that. So they'll probably stick with it for a while. But like you said, Minecraft is one of them, and I get to play Wolfenstein on mine.
Yeah, I noticed that in my feed.
They're not allowed to play on that.
Yeah,
and it's very good actually.
Yes,
I'm getting quite into that.
The one thing I have done, we got the it's kind of semi-official. It's not completely. It's not an Xbox One, but it is a branded Xbox accessory, which is the TV mount for the Kinect for the Xbox One, which actually comes with a free it's a mast that slides onto the side of the Kinect to cover the camera. I think it's kind of a bit of a hint for the people that didn't want it watching them all the time, but we've used it to get around the issue of my kids wanting to play maybe a game signed in as me and it automatically switching them to them.
Right, yeah.
So covering the camera does that. But it has started making me realise that actually in some ways, do we really need to Kinect? Because, we've kind of got over the whole trying to use voice control, and when you're watching a film and once you've shouted 3 or 4 times Xbox pause and it still hasn't paused and your wife's looking at you like, just pick up the remote. I think I do wonder. No, that's it. And I have got to the point where actually I'm thinking, why have I even got this thing connected? Because while it's a nice little gimmick, I do wonder whether or not we're going to see that as a one of those Microsoft Microsoft hardware that had great possibilities but just never quite worked in the real world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I very rarely use mine, so I think if possibly at some point I'll disconnect it. But yeah, I know what you mean. Right, well I think we've just about run out of time there, so I'll include a link for everything we talked about in the show notes. There's a couple of the bits and pieces as well, of video reviews that I've done, and there's an update for Kodi, which is the new name for XBMC, but you listen to last week's show to find out what we thought on that one.
Yeah, I'm definitely listen. Normally I try to listen before coming on the show again, but unfortunately, not this time.
Yeah, well, good, you won't know what we said about you, so that's not too bad.
If I'm not on next week, that's why I've fallen out with you.
Yeah, we should have said some stuff about Gary, really, while he's not here. We missed
I think that's the first, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll go about that.
I know where he is. He's out queuing up to buy his Xbox One.
That's what he's doing. Yeah, but he'll be getting his Call of Duty one morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's a big Call of Duty fan. He wears all the camo gear, at home.
Oh yeah, I can imagine that. I've seen the pictures.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, well, great stuff. So good to be back. So we should probably be back same time next week, 8:30 UK time in the chat room, or you catch us any time on YouTube and on the podcast. And where can we find your Twitter?
You can find me at Database Jace.
Excellent. And so we'll see you next week.
Yeah, cheers, Ian. Bye.
Well, thanks to everybody in the chat room. Good stuff.